Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. I'm Brother Ali. This is the first time that I've done proper, like an introduction for the podcast where you can see me on my real camera and all that good stuff. Our podcast has been a little under construction, I would say, because of the fact that we've really been focused, our little small team has been focused on rolling out this new album called Love and Service. And so this is a very special episode. I've been working on this album literally since I moved to Istanbul a few years ago. And this friendship and creative relationship with unJUST, with my man Justin, is something that's been developing for that long. And I'm really grateful to be able to share not only who this person is. It's just an amazing person. This podcast is all about these really incredible people that I'm just blessed to share life with. And we've all got them. But one of the things that I really want to do is to just be able to share these really wonderful insights that I've gotten into these beautiful people. And a lot of times by being in community with them and having different experiences with them, traveling with them, you just see people from this really different perspective and vantage point. But there's nothing quite like creating something together that comes from a genuine collaboration between two hearts, two minds, two sets of viewpoints and experiences. You see a person in a way that you can't see them in any other way, in any other circumstance. So I'm very grateful to be able to share this. The album that we made together is slowly being rolled out as we speak. So as of right now, the album Love and Service, that's produced entirely by my man Just, is also animated and illustrated by him. So each one of the 13 songs that we are releasing on this album, Love and Service, have an amazing piece of music that he created, a song that I made out of that music, but then also he's doing animated, illustrated short films or vignettes or animated shorts for each of the songs. The 3 that we've released so far, the first one is called Ottomans, which is the backdrop for the whole album. It's about the fact that me and my family picked up and moved from America to Istanbul, Turkey, with the intention of healing and growing and having a new lease on life. And so that's the perspective from which this album is created. And you'll hear about that relationship between us. And then the second one released is a story called Cadillac that you've heard me tell on this podcast. If you listen to this podcast, you've heard me tell that story. But I've always needed to make a song about that particular incident in my life. And so I'm really grateful to be able to tell that story in a way that feels like it honors the feeling and the texture of what happened and what it means to me, And so the third song that we just released is called The Collapse. Before when we recorded this interview, this conversation, we recorded for 4 hours. And so this is actually going to be 2 separate episodes of the podcast. But we hadn't released The Collapse yet. The Collapse is our critique of the empire and the fact that the empire is collapsing. We're also talking specifically about, the imperialism and consumerism. And so it's part of what's interesting and unique about that particular song and this album in general is that, me as a Muslim and Just as a Jewish man, a Jewish brother, anti-Zionist Jewish brother, that we made this album together before everything kicked up again in the Middle East. And so, we made it all the way through this album, and honestly, the album was done. We had the album mixed and it was ready. We were going to roll it out. And then it's like, no, we need a song about this. This has to be part of our statement that we make together. So we went back in and created this song, The Collapse. And we've got a lot more coming. This album, Love and Service, the features on it are just amazing. Rock Marciano is on it and really came through. A$AP Rock is on it. I mean, these are 2 of the greatest underground. Really, it's a collection of some of the greatest underground artists of all time. Casual from the Mighty Hieroglyphics crew is on it. Quelle Chris is on it. Just these are some of the heavy hitters of all time, not to mention our time. And this album is available for pre-order right now. We did beautiful deluxe vinyl. So the CDs are almost sold out, the cassettes are almost sold out. The vinyl, there's a limited number of the vinyl. We will probably press more, just in full disclosure. We're not saying that it's, limited or exclusive, but there is a certain number that we pressed to begin with. And when those are gone, we'll have to decide whether we're gonna order more. But it's a beautiful package. Think about the fact that the heart and hands and mind of the person who made all of the music also did these animated shorts, these vignettes. So when the project is done, it'll also be a 40-minute animated film. And each of the videos is a different style. It's just really dope. But then he also created, the packaging doesn't feel like the right word. It really is about the home that this project, thing lives in, that we deliver it to you in. So Just also created, a 32-page booklet with writings and lyrics and tables and it's so dope. So go to brotherali.com now and you'll be able to pre-order that vinyl, that deluxe vinyl. That's the way to go. And people always say, how do we support you in this time? That's so difficult, being one of the few artists that is really publicly outspoken about the rights and the humanity of the Palestinians and their plight and their struggle. That's a very rare thing, and in the music industry, it's not it's not just a trope to say that that's the difficult subject to talk about. You will get pushback, and there will be people that will close doors to you, and we're experiencing it. So people always say, how can we support? The best way is to go to brotherali.com, sign the mailing list. That's free, just so that we don't have to worry about social media shadow banning us or calling our content sensitive or political and filtering it from you. We can just send you an email directly. I write them myself. We don't spam you. I write those emails whenever I have something really genuine that I'm excited to share with you. And then the other thing is to support the vinyl, especially. But CDs and the tapes, all of it helps. For the first time ever, I'm truly independent. And so when you go to brotherali.com, everything that's up there goes directly to us. And so we have partners and things like that. The things that are on Rhymesayers, we still purchase them from Rhymesayers, and then, so they sell them to us for a certain price. We sell them for a certain price. But then also Rhymesayers is actually paying me my royalties, and so that's also helpful. So going directly to us and getting the things that we offer. If you enjoy the music from any artist, you're helping the artist by buying it. Even if they're on a label and even if they're not seeing all their royalties, you're still helping the artist by purchasing the music that you really love and enjoy. So that's good to know. The Zakat Foundation is the sponsor of this podcast from day one. And I always love being in partnership with them, but when certain things happen, like the earthquake here in Turkey, the fact that they're already set up and they're doing everything they can to support, it just makes me feel really grateful that we have that in place. And right now, the move during this month of Ramadan is to provide 1 million meals to the people of Gaza. And it's $5 to provide a meal. I want the people within our following, the sound of my voice, our tribe, our bubble, our community, whatever you call it, I want us to provide 5,000 meals for the people of Gaza. So, click the link wherever you see it. Even if you just go directly to Zakat Foundation and do it there, it's $5. And people say, well, aren't they having difficulty getting that stuff into Gaza? Yes, they are. But there are people that Zakat Foundation has on the ground doing everything they can to get those trucks into Gaza. So while they're doing that, what I can do is for me and the people that rock with me to keep those trucks full. And we do what we can, while we can, when and how we can. So Zakat Foundation is doing that. Hit the links and you'll be able to go and provide meals for the people of Gaza. We're also in a partnership with BetterHelp, because I did therapy with them and it really helped me. My wife's a therapist and I believe in it a lot. So we'll talk more about that later. But enjoy this episode and next week's episode with this really incredible human being. And if you don't know who he is, it's because that's the nature of this business and industry. Sometimes very sincere people don't make a big deal about look at me, look at me, look at me. And so I'm really grateful, if you don't know him, to be able to share the music we made together and our really beautiful relationship, and also just to be able to say, yo, look at this beautiful guy, my man Justin Herman, aka unJUST, who is making the transition into just being known more. It's a more adequate and accurate representation of who he is as Just. Enjoy this episode of Travelers Podcast. Remember, like, when we first started, like, with the whole process of putting the record out, I'm like, man, this is like planning a wedding. You know what I'm saying? Because you start out, like, the whole thing initially is like you meet each other, is like the falling in love thing. And then you're like, man, we're going to make an album together. It's going to be all of our experiences for the last couple years. This is going to be like the statement piece about this period of our life. It's like, I love you, man. It's like the whole discovery thing of like falling in love. And then you're like, okay, now let's put the album out. And it just turns into like, yeah, do you have this in high res? Could you reformat this, please? When you get a chance, could you please approve the what's the name? And it just turns into all logistics. So I feel like I haven't talked to you in months, man.
I know. Although we've been talking every day, it's just mostly like, yeah, like you said, it's like, so did you get a hold of the caterer?
Yeah.
And you know, and the centerpieces are just like we planned with the.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to talk to you, man. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, and then most of our conversations were on voice notes. Like, we only talked in real life, or we only met each other in real life one time. Like, I've only hugged you in the actual physical one time, and then most of our stuff was over voice notes for the last couple years.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting way to communicate, but you know, I still felt an enormous connection, and like I said, there were so many times I was like, "Ooh, I just said something that might be stupid. That might end this right now." But
Man, I wish people didn't
you
feel
know,
that way about me. That's not how I want to be.
it's not you. It obviously has nothing to do with you.
It
It's how I
is. A
feel
lot
about
of people feel
myself.
that. A lot of people are, yeah, a lot of people that I meet are intimidated by me, or they say something similar. Like, man, I don't want to say something stupid. So if it's okay, so I basically want to get into a bunch of stuff, but I figured it would be cool to start with how we met, which is right when I moved to Istanbul. Really quickly, it was a really kind of like traumatic experience leaving Minneapolis. Coming here, I got an Airbnb for 2 weeks. We came here in the middle of the month. I got an Airbnb for 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, I have those 2 weeks to find an apartment. And it was like, the pandemic, no shows, was very broke. Was just on some like wing and a prayer. I heard it's cheaper there. Let's just go. And so we packed up everything. Most of the stuff that we had, we got rid of. And we came to Istanbul with five. We had five duffel bags, and then two road cases. One was a turntable, just in case they didn't have turntables in the country of Turkey for some reason. But the other one was an ASR 10. Like, I had a special case made for the ASR 10. And I've been here for a couple of years and haven't plugged it in because I can't find a transformer that I really trust enough with the European power. I'm like, man, if this thing goes out, I probably would throw it away but I just love that machine so much. So about 2.5 weeks in, I find an apartment. We move in. Literally, the only things in the apartment are the beds. We don't have any chairs to sit on. There's no rugs. There's no table. There's no curtains. Like, we had paper taped on the windows because, like, you come, it's like nobody speaks English. I didn't speak any Turkish at all. It's just hectic. And I'm sitting there one morning scrolling on Instagram, and I come across a new Paris video. And I love Paris, you know what I mean? And now I know that you do too.
Oh
Like, one
man,
of the most revolutionary, just militant artists in the world. But like most militants are, if you get to know them, they're really beautiful people. That's just outpouring of love. People become radicalized because they love people and they hate to see people suffer. And you just see it over and over and over again to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm going to stop being nice about this. So I see a new Paris video and I'm like, man, it was so dope. Like, just something about it was really beautiful. And then you were tagged in it. So I went and scrolled through your page and I just saw all of these animated videos and these like really interesting beats. And so I hit you up and was just like, hey, you're dope. Like, how come I never met you before?
And I said, I think you have the wrong number. I said, I think
Right,
you got the
right.
wrong
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
But thank you.
yeah.
And you were like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, I'm like, nah, I've been looking at your stuff. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is super dope. And so I think we started trading voice notes like right away, just on the DM. And you said, I think you proposed making an album together right away, if I'm not mistaken. You definitely proposed music. And I was like, yes, but I don't
Yes.
have any way to do music right now. And you said, okay, how long do you need? How long before I hit you back? I said, I don't know, give me a month. I checked the DMs to make sure 30 days later exactly, you sent me a folder with 30 beats in it. And you're like, nobody's heard these. These are for you. And here we are.
I mean, yeah, that was at that point, I was making a beat a day, which for me is a lot. Because I like to sit with them. Like I like to put time on them every day. But yeah, that is how it went down. That is, and I got to take a second to shout out Paris a little more because he's such an interesting person and such a wonderful soul. I love him. Like he is one of the smartest people I ever met. He's got an insane background. He's in finance and real estate, and as well as the music. And he makes all his own beats. Incredibly slept on producer,
Yeah.
like musician, insane. But the thing about him with the videos is he's the only client I've ever had that he can do he can do it. He can do it himself. Like he directed me frame by frame. Like, hey, make this one, because he knew how to do it himself. He just didn't have the time. I mean, he became a very close friend. He brought me like holistic, like he brought me medicine. He drove 2 hours to bring me medicine. Love that. I love Paris. And, you know, I know you've heard me say this before, but when you build with love, everything is a monument. And I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I'd never done any work for him. It's amazing.
Yeah, obviously I grew up loving really militant hip hop, and it's my favorite thing. And that and the spiritual path, and I see him as all connected. And he is, out of all the people that I've been around and that I've known and loved, and I've been blessed to connect with most of the people that I really look up to, he is one of the most fearless in terms of his messaging and his imagery. And I mean, he's done things from the very beginning that he knew. It's like, there's no way that the music industry will ever embrace me with this imagery and with these messages. And yeah, Paris sent me, once we started communicating, he sent me a bunch of records. Like, he just sent me a big stack of vinyl. He's like, hey man, this is everything that I've put out. It was his whole catalog.
Wow.
And I have it, and it's in my storage unit in Minneapolis, but it's a big deal, man. And so it's a beautiful way to be connected through somebody like him.
It's really, it really is. And I've always loved that kind of hip hop too, obviously. But, not to jump ahead, but in terms of being pro-social and being socially active and fighting for justice, that was my dad's whole thing, right? And I was like, I made a clear decision early. I'm not doing that because I'm seeing you give your life away. You're giving yourself away, and I'm not going down that path with you. But as soon as I got really honed in and focused on my craft, that's where it took me.
Yeah,
creatively, like it just circled right back to it.
Yeah. And then we also had the connection through both Ohio and the Bay. Were both big like connections for us. So you grew up in Ohio and then went to the Bay to work with Hyro, right? Like you started out, you were like, you hooked up their MySpace for him?
No. This is the year 2000. I'm in college learning, I'm at Ohio University learning animation and graphic design, whatever. I just sent them an email. They had just launched a website, like the first real comprehensive hip hop website. And I was just like, hey, I'm a big fan. I do Flash animation. I don't know if you're looking for any. I noticed your site doesn't have a Flash intro. Tajay got back to me immediately like, dude, yes, that's exactly what we need. uh, you want to do it? And I was like, sure. And I, did it for nothing because what do I need? That was a thrill. That already was a thrill of my life. And I did it and they used it. And it was the flash intro for their site for years. And I continued to work with them after that on project based things until they flew me out. I just redesigned their website and they flew me out at the end of 2003 as like a payment. Like, hey, we got miles if you want to come out. And I met everybody. And it wasn't even 6 months later, I had moved out. And actually, I was visiting and at the Hyro building, and I had applied for a part-time job at ABB Records with Benny B. And ID, Ian Davis, had just left there and was working at Hyro. He said, oh, you did? Hold on. Gets on the phone. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, you start Monday. So as soon as I got that gig, I was like, that's all I need to be out of here.
Yeah.
And, and the rest is history. Like, I had two of my friends drive my stuff out. And that was that was the middle of 2004. And then I was in Oakland until 2021 when right at the same time you were moving to Turkey, it was that same kind of big change in my life. Like I left the community that I had built, this amazing creative community that I was so fortunate to be invited into, back to a place where I had all this historic pain and feelings of disassociation and disconnection. So a part of my return trip, I think, spiritually has been to heal some of that and to deal with it. And I definitely have been.
So, the pandemic was difficult for everybody. We also had a lot of different factors in our family and our life and our community. Like we were in South Minneapolis and there was an uprising, and then there also was like a sort of like a public call out of the music community in the Twin Cities. And I wasn't really sure where I fit into all of that. You know what I mean? Nobody ever said Brother Ali's canceled, but also nobody said he's not. And it was a really, really challenging, difficult time. And there was a number of other things going on around that same time. And man, it was a personal like low for me. Like I felt really like I have no idea what to do. It also was a time that I had decided not to do my business on Rhymesayers anymore, which was like my safety net. They were the people that I started with. It's all I knew. That was my entire relationship with making and releasing music and being a musician. I've been with them since I was 20 years old. My whole adult life was spent with them. And I was just like, man, I don't know what to do. Like I really, I don't know who I am. I don't know if anybody still, cares about me or values me. I don't know if anybody wants to hear my music anymore. It sounds silly, but that's the way that I felt. And so some people that I knew were in Yellow Springs with Dave Chappelle, and they're like, hey, Dave's doing this thing, Chappelle's summer camp. We're all getting tested and we've got a bubble and we don't have to wear masks and we're not distancing. We're all together. There's a bunch of comedians and rappers and creatives and artists and we're eating good food and we're, kayaking on rivers and like, you got to come. And it's like, your name has come up. You should really come. So I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You know what I mean? But I went and it was one of the most like validating, healing experiences of my lifetime. And while I was there, just because I knew that all of these are the people that I always look up to, Pharoah Monch and Black Thought and Dave and Black Star and, all of those kind of people. That's the Common, the Roots. Those are the people that I wanted to be associated with when I was like, oh, because those are the people that made me feel like maybe it was possible for me. So the first night I'm there, I'm out in the audience and I'm watching. I'm like, this is amazing. And he starts introducing me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no plans on performing. He's like, hey, I'm going to tell you something that sounds like you're going to think this is a joke, but it's not a joke. It's actually true. I'm going to bring out the first time you've ever seen, for some of you, perhaps all of you, a white albino Muslim. And he just happens to be one of the baddest rappers you've ever heard. And so suddenly, I'm out in the audience and I'm like jogging, trying to get back to the backstage. And the DJ just throws on, he probably just went on Spotify. And he was like, he just threw on Forrest Whitaker, #1 song on Spotify, Forrest Whitaker. It's all slow. The vocals are in it. And I'm starting to perform and I'm like, no, this is not how this is going to go. So I turn around and say, hey, turn that off. Just play Nas beats and Wu-Tang beats. Change it every 16 bars or whatever. Let's just go. And so he starts playing beats, and I did a combination of verses and off the head and whatever else. And I can just hear Dave and everybody just going, ah, like just going nuts. You know what I mean? It was so dope. And then afterwards, very specifically, the person that really made me know that it was true was Donnell Rollins. Because I'm saying, like, I've always been cool with him. And he's a very sincere person. Like, however he feels is exactly how he presents himself to you. Like, there's no filter at all. But he was like, yo, son, I knew the artist was about to come out, son. I knew he wasn't going to I knew he would. And he was clowning the DJ. He's like, Drama, you suck, son. You suck. I knew the artist was going to come out. Ali wasn't about to go out like that. And it was just so dope, man. It was really dope. And then, David Banner came through, and we started recording the Midnight Miracle podcast, and I was sitting in on that, kicking it with Mo Amer and Michelle Wolf and, the people that were there at that time. And then I also talked to Yassine, and Yassine was like, he was just like, hey, what's up with you? And I'm like, man, I don't know what to do about anything anymore. Like, I just feel completely... And he said, man, you don't have to be in America anymore. And so we made the decision to come to Turkey. Like that was, and so basically being there in Yellow Springs was like another rebirth for me that birthed this whole part of life. So the fact that when we connected, you're from Ohio, and you were, right when we were connecting, you were moving back to Yellow Springs from the Bay. There's something about that I don't know if people outside of us need to understand it or could understand it, but the divine providence of both of us making these big, developments and changes to start the next chapter of our life, and the fact that they're that related and that we overlapped and connected in that very, very specific moment of like, man, I don't know what life is about to be, but having this music to focus on during that particular time was so incredibly just healing and soothing. And I just really got the ability to survive and to heal and to thrive. It didn't have to end well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To be able to, for me and for us to be able to listen and say, like, we have a musical record that's like, not only did we survive it, but actually we started a new chapter of life. That's beautiful. And that I feel like my whole life before this was leading up to this moment.
I always have placed collaboration higher than anything I could do myself. And moving back to Yellow Springs was a complete shift for that. Like, before, when I was in Oakland, I was always with somebody, with Ope, with Pep, with my man Cole Shoulder, with anybody that was around. We were always creating together, making beats together. And now in this time, it's really just me alone making the beats. So like, we're on the other side of the world, and we're having a true moment of collaboration. Yeah. A true, not even a moment, like, years of like real heartfelt and heart-activated collaboration. And my experience of coming back or seeing Yellow Springs, you got to understand, like, Dave Chappelle doing outside stuff with Fairmont and with, that's insane. But to have it happen in Yellow Springs, Ohio, is literally, you have a better chance of winning the lottery and getting struck by lightning. Like, this is not a place where there's ever been any real cultural magnet like that. Like, there is a history of activism, and Coretta Scott King, went to school at Antioch and taught. But I grew up begging for something culturally important to happen, and here I am in the Bay, where not only COVID is happening, and I mean, the lockdown was 15 months in the Bay.
Yeah, California went harder than anybody.
Hard in the pain. I'm seeing deers walking across the 580 and the 880, just calmly walking, just looking, hey, you coming? Just no cars, no nothing. And what people don't talk about the Bay experience that during that was there was 8 consecutive weeks of not being able to breathe. The smoke from the fires that year were so bad that I'm still working out, some psychological effects of it. Like we were every day we would look at the map and drive to where it was at least yellow so we could breathe. So then I get on Instagram amidst all this, and people I know from the Bay are canoeing down the river in Yellow Springs. Like, what are you talking about? What's happening? And so I started calling my friends that I knew were involved, like Dave's house DJ, Fatty Lumpkin. Shout out to Fatty, love that man. But I started talking to him on the phone, like, what is happening? Why is everybody in Yellow Springs? What's going on? And he's like, you should think about coming back. Like I was like, are you guys partying or are you guys creating together? He's like, oh, we're creating. It's not all party. Like we're working. I was like, okay, well, that's all you had to say. And then when I talked to you, whether you know it or not, something that you said really sank in the fact that yes, I am moving back to Yellow Springs, and yes, I know my purpose for it. You said that when you were in Yellow Springs, you noticed how much creatives meant to each other and how we needed each other, much creative people needed each other, and how beautiful it was that Dave was able to do that for his group of creative friends.
Yeah.
And it just hit me like a bus that we all creatives need that at every level, not only the successful. You need that when you're starting. You need that when you're, intermediate. You need it at every point. And it also is something that I never had here. Mm-hmm. Like not even an inkling. I started to get an inkling before I left, but even that was disappointing on some level. Like the culture wasn't like that here. You didn't, also the time, like not everybody was into hip hop. You were kind of a nerd, fringe nerd. It wasn't like now where everybody's rapping or making beats or whatever. But I knew I knew after hearing that from you that was my purpose, to try to provide that for people. When I get back here, I have to try to galvanize the non-famous and the people that are still trying to get their craft together. Like it was time for me. And that's what I did. So there is something about that. Like we both left our communities that we probably thought we would never leave, to seek something out and to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man. The feeling that we have sometimes, of being connected to a place and leaving that place feels like leaving it's a relationship, like there was a long time where I felt like with Minneapolis, like, you see on people's Facebook bio sometimes, they'd be like, are you in a relationship? Are you single? And it'd just be like, it's complicated. You know what I mean? Like I felt like me in Minneapolis was complicated for a long time. Like I wasn't sure how to feel about that place, and having the option to come somewhere else and to just really figure out who I was outside of all of those safety nets or cocoons or, that these attachments that I had started to see myself in that context, and to remove that context, I really got a sense of this is who I am.
Coming back here and working on this record and all there's been a lot of other work that has happened during that time too, like stuff I've meeting Quali and doing all this animation for him. Like all this stuff has made me more secure within myself as my own creative, fountain or whatnot. Like, cause it's hard to get, like, I have infinite love and gratitude for my brothers from High Row. Like some of the best people, like you talk about meeting your heroes, they became such good friends. But that's a big shadow to come out of to try to establish yourself.
Yeah.
It really is. And plus, these guys did so much for me. Like I have an image of being at South by Southwest where Opio was literally holding a door open for me for like 15 minutes till somebody he knows can come back and let me in when he's supposed to be on stage. And at that moment, I was like, I want to establish myself so that I can reach back and possibly help them some way at some point.
Hyro, for a lot of us that are independent, I mean, they were the gold standard because they were the crew that came before us that inspired a lot of the. I mean, you listen to early Atmosphere, it really sounds a lot like, I was telling Slug and Antis, and they both gave me the thumbs up on it, but it sounds like hieroglyphics rhyming over Mobb Deep beats. Like that's what early Atmosphere is. And
Yeah.
they were both like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it might even make more sense to say hieroglyphics rhyming and duck down beats, because those were the
Mm.
two crews that Rhymesayers grew up looking up to. That these are guys that came in that made music that we genuinely respected and loved and knew all the words and knew all the samples and all that kind of stuff, and would go and see them perform. And they both left the industry by choice when they were at or near the height of their career. They made the decision to leave the industry and to start something independent and to really build something for themselves. And they were both very accessible. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't there this particular day, but there's these stories of Buckshot coming to Minneapolis to do an event for Rhymesayers in the very beginning, and coming to Sadiq's crib to do laundry, and just hanging out, sitting on top of the laundry, on top of the washing machine, and just talking about, yeah, well, you can get your records pressed here, and you could do a distribution deal if you want, or you could do this, and so that whole thing with Hyro, being people that are genuinely some of the greatest. Like Casual is on our album, and in my mind, Casual is in my top 5. And I think that what's more interesting to me than people's top 5 is like, who are your top 5 that people never mention? Like, who are the top 5 that should get mentioned that don't? And I mean, to me, Casual is one of the greatest MCs that ever lived. He's been one of the most consistent for the longest. Like, if you were to take just the rhymes that he said over the years, and how stylized he is, how humorous he is, his ability to tell stories, his wordplay, his subject matter, like, man, I think that he's right there with Black Thought, and I think he's right there with a lot of the, Doom and the great people that a lot of times people think of.
Hmm.
And it's just a crew full of incredible artists, man. Like Dell is one of the most influential of all time in multiple phases. Like you talk, early Dell, his influence on Cube, his influence on, even gangster rap at the time, conscious rap at the time, and then his album, and then the Deltron record, and like, man, there's just
Not even
so
to mention Gorillas. Not even, you don't even
yeah,
need
the
to bring up
Gorillas,
Gorillas.
yeah, man. I mean, there's just so much that's come out of that musical family. So your connection with them is it just really means a lot, man. So when you came on with them, what were the things that you learned about being an artist and doing it as a profession from that crew?
Have a sound. Don't try to sound like anyone else. Do it. That Dell and I always used to connect and talk about that at length. Was like, do it for you. Do it because you love. Like, make something you love.
Mm-hmm.
Because I won't name names, but I got really down. I met other very prominent producers that were making like that. There's like, hey, I make whatever's in. Like, I gotta eat. I make whatever's in.
Right.
And I understand that completely. No
Yes.
shade.
Yes.
But for me, like I saw and what I heard directly
Mm-hmm.
was have your own voice, do what you like, and build that voice. And I mean, from very early on,
Yeah.
people would tell me I could tell that was your beat. I knew as soon as it came on.
Yes.
You know, so that made me know that I'm on um, the right path. And I mean, you're talking about the people in this crew. Tajay, anytime I think I'm doing too much, I just give Tajay a call because he's doing twice as much.
Mm.
I've never met anybody that does as much. He's an architect. He's touring all over the world. He's an amazing father. He's he's got a million professions. Dell is one of the most prolific, and like, you talk about an artist, he's making music. Like he was like, oh, send me some beats. I sent him 13 beats. 24 hours later, there were 13 songs. And some of them were, freestyles or whatever, but like he makes music. If you go to his house, if you walk in his house, there's no function of that house but to make music. Like there's literally, you walk in and you're surrounded by equipment in every room all around you. Like I did an album cover for Dell and I went to his house and we met about it. And I'm just looking around like there's machines all around me. You can see him just like going over this one, going over this one. Casual is as good at fishing as he is at rapping. He's as good as a videographer. He's like, no, he's so good at so many things.
Yeah, motorcycles, remote control cars. Like, man, that's the hobby man. That's the hobby master, yo. But I mean, and you talking about like, man, Kemet, Egyptology. Yeah, he was one of the first on Bitcoin. He was one of the first on NFTs. They were some of the first on virtual reality. Like, you know, and that's why it's a trip that you connected with them over the website. You know what I mean? Because they were so early with so many technological things, man.
Yeah, they were the first. And I mean, I became, because of that Flash intro, I became like a lot of people's Flash guy for their MySpace or whatever, you know? And then Flash died and I thought I was done. I was like, well, I guess I'll go back to selling alarm systems door to door or whatever. I'll figure something out. But I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can use something else and achieve the same output. And thank God I did.
Yeah. You know, and to your point about your music having a distinctive sound. I mean, that was the thing when I just was scrolling through your page, I could really feel that the same heart and mind and hands that were what was making the music was also doing the visual stuff. Just because every single beat that you sent me, and when you sent me that first folder, I was like, man, I think I like all of these. And I didn't end up writing to every single one of them, but I think the thing that I started to realize as I was listening through them is that all of them had a sound that they felt really connected. And knowing now that it's the ASR 10 is like, it just makes total sense, you know? Like, man, that thing, I love that machine. Like the way that I feel about that machine is hard to describe. Like the ASR 10, it just sounds perfect. It looks beautiful. It feels beautiful. The way that the keys feel, the sounds that are made when you click through hit the buttons on the top. There's just something about that machine that, like, my whole musical career is on that machine. Ant uses it, Jake One uses it, Evidence uses it. Now this record that we have together, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's one of the only things I brought to Istanbul with me.
It's so crazy because I got a custom case made too when I moved home.
For people that don't know, like most of the time, the keys of the keyboard, the back of it are usually about the same size as the keys of the keyboard. Whereas the ASR 10 has the 88 keys, but then the back of it is super thick and it's really heavy. I said to Evidence one time, I was like, why do we love the ASR so much? And he goes, because it's got a fat ass.
It's the truth. Let me see if I don't know if this is in frame, but this is the ASR 88.
Okay.
This is the actual 88 key ASR. Most of them are not 88. Most of them are 64, I think. This one, there's none of these online. I have an ASR, and it's enormous. It's like 200 pounds. Yeah. Crazy. And then I have a rack in the living room where the records are. I love it. And it's funny. Evidence. There's two people that taught me how to use it. One, shout out to my man DJ Lou, who has used to make beats for some Chuck D signed groups back in the day. But second is Evidence. Evidence gave me an on the phone tutorial in like 2006.
Yeah.
Where he said, "Okay, turn the lights off." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You have to know how to work this thing in the dark. Turn the lights off right now in your room."
He's so amazing. There's nobody like this guy, man. There's nobody like Ev.
And I did. I was like, "Okay, sir, if you say so, I'll turn the lights off." And he gave me some tricks, like how to put, as many sounds on one channel.
Yeah.
But until that point, I had the kick on one and the snare on one, and then I hope there's a channel left over for a sample, for the lead.
Yeah.
But yeah, he
taught me a lot about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Much love the Evidence.
Absolutely. And so the thing was that every single piece of music, none of it was doing what I expected it to do. Like none of the beats were moving how I expected them to move. There was something unexpected about every single one, which made them all feel interesting. And then they also had a certain there was like a certain humanity to them. There's like a certain soul to them. They all made me feel something, along with just being like, they're all a little quirky and weird. But then also, they all made me feel some sort of emotion. And they also had a lot of space. Like all of the music that you've ever sent me, like I never have to fight against the music. You know what I mean? Like it's doing something interesting, and then the rhythm is always there's always something like there's a very like natural human like soulful rhythm to them. They all make me feel something, and then there's just space to do so much on them. Like so many of your beats, like I'm able to really just kind of meditate on a subject. And so I don't know if you know this, I think you do, but I only sat down and wrote one of the songs. Like the title track, Love and Service, is the only one I wrote. All the rest of them I did sitting right here with this podcast mic and just thinking of 4 bars at a time and then recording it as I went. So like literally all of the songs were constructed like that because of the fact that just sitting with the music, there was so much like intrigue and space for me to just think about and like process. Like I was able to like live inside the music and get in there, and it feels good in there. Like it feels like it's comfortable. There's something like soulful and comfortable in there. And then the whole time that that I'm writing these songs also is just like hours of voice notes of us talking about what it means and how we feel about these subjects, and you know, all of that. It's just like I never made a project like this before.
No. This record, I've made a lot of stuff that I love. I love the First Light record that I made with OBO Pep. I love the Ron John Bovey with Casual and Fat Cat. But the role that hip hop played for me as a kid was really important. The messaging I was hearing, it helped me not get caught up in the things that a lot of other of my friends got caught up in. And I don't think I had made anything to this point that was like that for anybody else. You know, I made cool shit. Pardon my French. I made cool stuff people could rock out to, but this music, this album that we made, what you did with these beats could save someone, could help someone, would have been something that 17-year-old me would have gravitated towards. This album has so much meaning. I've never done anything, maybe even visually, that has this much meaning. And that's enormously important to me, and has been beyond healing for me. It's given me a new view into what I'm capable of and who I am.
We say it every week, but we've been rocking from day one with the Zakat Foundation. They've sponsored this podcast because they understand that as a global humanitarian organization, it's really important to be embedded in culture. That culture and art is what really moves people in this day and time. So it's really forward thinking of them. It's very creative of them. It's really unique of them to be connected to not only me as a artist and cultural worker, but the community that I'm connected to. So they're supporting conversations with people like unJUST and Dr. Cornel West and Pharaoh Monch and Immortal Technique and Slug from Atmosphere and Ari the Rugged Man and Sa Rock and Moo Fresh and Adrienne Marie Brown and Kiese Lehman, all the dope people that we've had on this podcast. The Zakat Foundation is saying, like, yes, we are a global humanitarian organization. Our job is to feed people and clothe people and build them homes and, you know, build them wells and to care for orphans and all this kind of stuff. But we need for this type of global healing to be part of culture. So they've sponsored this thing from day one. Right now, the move is to try to provide and to seek and intend to provide 1 million meals for the people of Gaza they've got people on the ground that had been successful getting meals in, getting trucks in, getting supplies in. And so while they're trying to get those trucks to the people, what we can do and what I can do is myself and encourage y'all that rock with us to keep those trucks full. And it's $5 to provide a meal. So hit the link wherever you see it, follow them on social media, and like I keep saying, let's do what we can while we can. You sent me these beats, and I messed with them so much. And like normally you don't do that to a producer. You know what I mean? Like normally you wouldn't take a producer, but I mean like I would change the BPM, I would add stuff to it. I would rearrange everything, and and there's still the heart of the beat that you made. They still, like, if somebody heard the beat that you sent and then heard the finished product, it's still the same beat. But
Yeah.
and I would show you these things and be like, hey man, let me know if I'm overstepping. And you were always like, no, go do it. Do whatever you want. You play it backwards, change the key, do whatever you want. So for you to be the person that made the music and then let me just play around in the music as much as you did, and then for you to bring the visual stuff to life, there were parts that, especially like the Cadillac video was the first one that I was like, this is incredible. But in my mind, I'm thinking about the way that the actual night went. So at first I was like, I'm going to give you notes. And so I was going to say, all right, change the suit and make it like this. The hat would be more like that. This would be, and then I sat with it for a minute. I'm like, no, you know what? This is perfect. This is perfect. This is what I did with the beats. You know what I mean?
And that, oddly enough, that was one of the beats you did the fewest with. I don't know. Like, I think there's nothing like that was one of the most straight up beats.
Just rap.
But I mean, again, I think a huge step on a spiritual path is being able to remove your ego and being able to remove yourself from the equation.
I know you've done a lot of really amazing visuals. And then once we started talking, I'm like, oh, I remember that Rock Marciano video. And like, there were certain things that I started putting together, like, oh, that's the dude that made that. You know what I mean? Like I knew your visual work before the Paris thing. I just had never connected it to you. But how did the visual side of things come together with the music, and how did that develop to, like, I still don't fully understand your professional role. I mean, I have an idea about it, but like I still don't really fully understand like what that is.
Well, creatively, my first outlet was music. I was a first chair saxophonist all the way until like 11th grade when I started to get an inkling of the social life, so I bailed on that, which disappointed a lot of people. And yeah, I spent a lot of time in my life in between then and like being like 19, 20, just not doing anything active with my creativity. It was a waste of time. Then I picked up a booklet for Ohio University in Athens about logo design, animation. Okay, so that's how I got into that. But there was never really a separation for me between the music. Like, I'm just somebody that, I think there's a term for it, but like when I heard my favorite songs, I would see visuals, and vice versa. When I saw really beautiful things, music would come to mind. So there's really no separation, but like my approach, like Cadillac is a perfect example, and Collapse, what's about to come out. Both with the visuals and what you've done with the music, what we were able to do together with that was create a scenario where we're pulling you in from the instant. There's no wasted time. You are pulled in. You're not given a space to let go. And then it's over and you just, whoa, what was that? Mm-hmm. I want to visually bring you in and keep you there and leave you with something. Mm-hmm. And, Cadillac and Collapse both are examples of that. Like I just showed the Collapse video at the Beat event I did, and like I heard that gasp. I heard people come up like, "Whoa!" Dope. And that's beautiful. And I think the other thing is, I need people that want to get better. That want to continually get better. Like I'm 45, been doing this a long time. Everything I do is better than the last thing still. Mm-hmm. And it's so exciting. Like I never am somebody, I don't think I'm all that great. I'm always trying to push myself to do better. And And it is a spiritual calling, I think, too, especially with this record. Because now I know that I can now I know that my music can be an act of service too. The music has always been just for me, but now I know that the music I have a hand in can really help people, and that's never been a part of my awareness of it, of my own stuff. So again, man, working with you has enriched my life in countless ways.
That idea of love and service comes from, so we have a spiritual teacher in the Gambia who basically said, his name is Sheikh Mohammed Jailani. You know, he counts as his students a lot of creative people. Cat Stevens is one of them. But he says that the entire spiritual path, that, you know, there are all these different, within the world of, you know, spiritual refinement within Islam, there are all these different kind of approaches or understandings of how to, you know, the spiritual sciences. And they all have the same elements. So all of them have knowledge, all of them have worship, all of them have, you know, personal sacrifice, all of them have charity, all of them have all these different things. But he says that the entire spiritual path, from our perspective, is love and service. So everything that happens in the heart is about, and they sound easy, like they sound like really easy things to do. But once you try to do them, like, can you genuinely forgive everybody? Can you genuinely, and this is something that I've been sitting with a lot, can I genuinely forgive everybody? And what's amazing is that there was a couple people that I was like, I'm not mad at this person, but we no longer are connected the way we used to be. And the more I started thinking about like what it would mean to really forgive them, which is really what it is to love.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I would never need to forgive them had I not genuinely loved them. And that love you know, and it's like, okay, but my love, the reason that I need to forgive them is because my love had expectations in it. And is that truly loving? Like, am I truly loving a person if I have expectations for them to be what I want them to be? Or can I just actually love them how they are? And so I started thinking about, and that's one of the things that he says is like, you will really love when you're really able to forgive everybody. There were people asking him about prayer, about fasting, about porn addiction, about all these different things. How to raise a teenager, their marriage, all this stuff. He's like, my advice for all of the answer to every question you're asking me is forgive everybody. And we all just were like, kind of like, dang, you know, because when somebody like that says it, it means it's different. And so he said, be like the apple tree. If you throw rocks at an apple tree, it throws you apples back. So you give it your worst and it gives you its best, you know? It was like, well, what do I do if like I want to forgive everybody? I don't, you know? So then it's interesting because once I started thinking about the act of forgiveness, also to forgive somebody means to acknowledge that they really harmed us, that they really did something wrong. And in this world of gaslighting, there's something really powerful about the ability to acknowledge that somebody really did harm us and choose to forgive them. There's something really powerful about that. But man, as I started to approach, and just even inside my mind, all of these people, I'm like, I don't want this album to come out before I have actually done that. And as I started to approach people, the more I thought about even just approaching the people in my life, I'm like, oh, I actually need to ask them to forgive me. Like that's the place where it's leading me to, is like, man, beyond even forgiving them, as I revisit these situations now that it's maybe a couple years later, I actually need to ask them to forgive me. Because if nothing else, I'm the one that cut off the relationship. These are people that I love and people that I lived life with. And because of whatever expectation that I had of them that they couldn't fulfill at that time, you know what I mean? Like I stopped communicating with them. And by the time I actually went to send that message and to reach out, I'm very genuinely like, man, I'm the one that needs to actually ask for forgiveness. I thought I was going to go deliver forgiveness. And I ended up asking forgiveness. I ended up being like, and it's not, I swear, this is not spiritual mumbo jumbo. I'm perfectly capable of that. I'm well adept at spirit. Like, you know what I mean?
You
Oh
really?
man, once you learn the language of the spiritual path, it's so easy to spiritually bypass and BS and like,
Yeah.
man. But man, I like really genuinely, I got to a place where like I need to apologize to these people. And so it's like, okay, so that's what it is to genuinely love. It's so easy to say, and it sounds pretty and it sounds nice, but like to really love is to like, okay, I love, but I don't own. I love you and I don't own you. I also have a 24-year-old son. He's about to be 24. I love you and I don't own you.
Yeah, it's removing yourself.
Yeah, like really removing, like, this isn't about my identity and my ego and my settings and my preferences and my whatever. Like, can I love you and just witness you purely? Because that's really hard to, like, the ego fucking hates doing that.
Hates it. It's so hard. There's a reason why, people say love is hard, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's two things that my dad used to say that I think fit into this. One, which I've said to you before, is he used to say, everything is explainable and nothing is excusable. And what I take that to mean is that even things that are done for righteous causes, you're not untied from that action.
Man, yeah.
And the other thing he used to say that still sticks with me and that I love, he would say, there are as many centers of the universe as there are beings in it.
Yeah.
He's like, so if you're in an argument with somebody, he used to love being in this, he used to love conflict. He used to love sitting in this place of multiple truths. Like, there's two parts to that. It's respect yourself enough as a center of the universe, but also know that other person on the other side is the center too.
Yeah.
And that you aren't when in terms of that, of that other being.
Yeah.
So those are two things I try to keep from him. Two of many.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's really profound. And you think about like, well, what's the reason to not forgive? And what's the, you know what I mean? And it's just the ego holding on to a sense of superiority. It's like, but it's so yummy to be right.
Oh my gosh.
And it's dangerous. It's dangerous being right. Like,
I think that's a problem with where we're at as a society, is people would far rather be right than righteous. They'd rather be correct than, they'd rather win the argument than be good. So
I think this is as good a point as any to talk about your name.
Yes.
Because admittedly, the second I saw your name, I was like, oh, okay. That's an interesting name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, walk us through so your name is Justin. And I mean, for a lot of people, especially 5%ers, like Just Blaze, his name is Justin. You know what I mean? And so the name becomes Justin or Justice or Just, you know what I mean? So how did you end up getting the moniker unJUST?
Well, first of all, I was going to be Justice. My name was going to be Justice until the very last second.
From your parents?
From my parents, yeah. I was going to be Justice until the very last second when they were like, well, we are in Xenia, Ohio. Give him a fighting chance out here. We'll just, name him Justin. Two things. There's two reasons that I named myself that. First of all, nobody gave me that name. And plus it's been a clunky name. Like, I'm on stage with Ope or with Opio or whoever, and it's like, yeah, give it up for Justin. Like, it's clunky. But I gave it to myself for two reasons. One, like you've said, and like we've discussed, like social justice and all that has always been a part of my being. For my dad would have me speaking engagements, speaking to kids my age when I was as young as 7 and 8. Like, that's just part of it. And seeing how ugly the world is and how ugly capitalism is and everything that we're in and what's proclaimed to be fairness through if you can afford it, if you can afford the lawyer, you can buy your way into
Right.
justice. So I was like, well, I'm against that, and I'm the opposite of that then.
Mm-hmm.
Equally important, though, was that I did not like myself. I did not like the version of myself that I was physically. Again, I was putting all my value on my, perceived successes or failures with the opposite sex. I didn't think I was cool. I was nice. I've always been this, being a good person, always all that. At that time, though, I felt like for my art that isn't for anybody else, I don't want to be the nice guy. Like I'm trying to come out swinging. Like I'm trying to come out and make something impactful and serious. And maybe it's dark. Maybe it's, heavy. Like I want to, as my artist self, I want to be the opposite of the things I don't like about me. And that has changed, that has changed over the years. I started taking better care of myself health wise, like in about 2012, and lost like 40 pounds and let things go that weren't serving me.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked myself. As soon as I really liked myself, I didn't like myself at all until I was about 33, 34. I swear, like, didn't think I was cool, hated myself in pictures. I wanted to be the opposite of what I hated about myself. But as soon as I started to really accept myself and like myself, that's when my wife showed up. That's when she showed up when I was ready to really love myself and my flaws and whatever. Like if I go on a pizza bender and I get fat, I still love myself. It's cool. I'll work out and I'll get back. Yeah. Like,
a pizza bender.
Where I look up and a pizza and a half is gone. Like
you're just like, oh, who did this?
Who did this? Oh, I'm so ashamed.
Oh man, pizza and ice cream, boy. God.
Yeah, that's it. That is it. And I mean, like, it is like a bender because you'll just come up for air at the end of it and be like, "What did I do?"
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
But yeah, man, like it was a name that I just didn't want to be all the things I didn't like about myself. Mm-hmm. But now, man, look, when people give me advice, I try to look at it as like, okay, do they know what they're talking about? Have they done what they're asking me to do? So when you told me, Yassine told me to change my name, I took that I think that's coming from someone that has experience. Abandoning a moniker that is one of the best monikers ever.
Yes. So
for something meaningful.
So for people who don't know, so I mean, I had asked you about it, and the worst thing that a person can be in the Quran is unjust. Like it's literally like the worst thing your person could be is unjust. So just like, damn. And so I was even thinking about Brother Ali unjust. And I'm like, oh man. You know what I mean? I'm like, So then for the people that are hearing this or watching this, I'm talking to Yassine Bey, and I was sending him the music as we were making it, and he loves it. And he, you know what I mean? He's so sweet. He knows he's my favorite. And at some point it went a voice note. We were talking on the phone, and he was just like, I think he had met you. I think you guys had met. And
I met him briefly in Yellow Springs. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was just like, yeah, he's a beautiful guy. And man, this music is so dope. He said, man, we got to do something about this name though, man. We got to tell him. And he's like, he wants to be so polite and so sweet. And he's like, tell him his name doesn't match who he is. It doesn't match what he's about. It doesn't match this music. It doesn't match. There's no injustice in this music. There's no injustice in, and he brought up names of other people that he wouldn't say this publicly, but so I won't. But he brought up names of MCs that we know whose names have troublesome meanings. And he's like, this person named themselves this, and look at what their life has been. You know what I mean? Like, look what their career has been.
Yeah.
And so then we came up with the idea of like crossing out the "un" whenever we can. But it's weird because like you've come to be known by this name, so people also love the person. And so I love the fact that like when we can cross it out, we cross it out. If not, if you're typing it into a social media app, you can't cross it out. But so
Right.
we make that part lowercase and then make just uppercase.
I love that too. I'm okay with honoring the past, but I'm also. It's better for me to lean into mastery of myself and be like, what I'm really about is justice and being just above all, and all caps.
Yeah.
Like, all caps, just like, the "un" part, it's still in me or whatever, but it is not my focus. I had planned to abandon the "un" altogether, but like, I feel like people, the little bit of recognition I have was like, no, we like that. We want to hold on to it. So I think we came up with a good solution, and
because it tells the story and the evolution of the name, but also the evolution of you as a person. You hear these conversations that I have with people, and so many of the people in our generation have really gotten hip to the idea of therapy. Not that that's the only way to heal, not that it's the only game in town, but trust me and just give it a try. If you haven't given it a shot yet, believe me, it's worth it. Therapy is not what it looks like on TV and in the movies. Therapy is not some expert, sitting in a chair telling you about yourself. Usually what therapy does is it gives us an opportunity to reflect on ourselves and our stories and the meaning that we've made out of the things that have happened to us, with us, through us, around us. It just gives us the opportunity to think about them from a different perspective. It gives us an opportunity for us to hear out loud the things that we've been thinking. We live isolated, and so we walk around with a lot of secrets, and we actually keep secrets from ourselves. And what therapy helps to do is unveil the secrets that we've been keeping from ourselves. So a lot of things are therapeutic. It's fine to make music and call it your therapy. It's fine to, go for walks and say that, fishing is my therapy, golf is my therapy, going to the spa and getting a haircut. And okay, all that stuff is therapeutic. But if you've never actually talked to a therapist, then there's a big opportunity that's there in the world that everyone that does it, I've never heard somebody say therapy is bad. I know people have had bad experiences in therapy, just like people have had, I went and saw a bad trainer one time, trying to unbig my back, as they say, and be less fat. I saw an untrained physical trainer one time, and he didn't teach me how to like load the weights and hold the weights right, and a weight dropped on my foot. And then a couple weeks later, he was having me do squats and didn't help me get my form together, and the bar went up on my neck, and I actually like really hurt myself. So yeah, you can have a bad experience with all this stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that like keep on going till you find somebody that's a good fit. Because just like going to see a trainer, you're going to get a different level of workout than you do if you just go to the gym by yourself. And talking to a therapist, you will have a type of freedom because we see ourselves better. We get more insight into ourselves, which can only be a good thing. So we have this partnership with BetterHelp because that's how I finally got into therapy after talking about it and honestly avoiding it for years. So if you go to betterhelp.com/travelers, you'll be able to get a discount. And they're also going to pay us a little bit of money because we help make the connection. And if you don't like your therapist, you just change. If you need to take a break, you can just pause it. You pause the payments. You schedule it how you want to, when you want to. And if you haven't tried therapy, this is a really good way to try it. BetterHelp.com. During the course of our conversation over the last couple years, um, we talked a little bit about your background. Like, we weren't really thinking about the fact that, like, now you tell the story of an album and you think about like why it's meaningful for the time and all that stuff. So like now it's part of the thing that gets sent to everybody that like, oh man, it's Muslim rapper and this Jewish producer making an album together. But it wasn't really a conversation at all until October. It's something that we're both aware of, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But it wasn't really a conversation until October. And then I would say for me, when we made the collapse, you remember I had that song idea. Like I did a version of that chorus on at least one other beat.
Yeah.
Like prior. I had this idea that was like, things are collapsing. And even before October 7th, but I was like, we should be saying something about the fact that things are collapsing and so much of music is just distracting for people. And so much of what we're supposed to do and so much of like what we're resisting in a lot of ways in the music that we're making, that, like you said, we're making the music that's meaningful to us, that focuses on meaning, that's seeking out meaning. Like the second song on this record is about the fact that we're going to die. Like that is the one thing you're not, like if you're trying to get people interested in your record, it's like, man, there's a whole song about the fact that you're going to die and that should be clear and present in life in every moment. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, that's not how you sell a record, but that's the music that we chose to make,
Yeah.
And then also Yasin there was like a clip that went viral because this young lady was asking him about Drake. And he was like, to me, if you watch the whole interview, he was saying the spirit of hip hop and punk rock and art that speaks to people like us and people like Yasin is that like the idea of offering people something from the world of meaning to help survive the craziness of life. Like all of the nightmares and the injustice of life that we face all the time. And so that's why the people that face the greatest injustice tend to produce the best art. And the people who see that for what it is and point out the absurdity and the hypocrisy of life and the people in power and all this stuff, that's why these people make the best art. So it was in that context that she said, what about Drake? Is Drake hip hop to you? But the part of that clip that went viral was him saying, Drake is like, it reminds me of shopping at the mall. It's good. He's not saying Drake can't rap. He's not saying Drake's not an MC. But he's just saying the spirit of that music isn't necessarily providing somebody with the internal, the spiritual, the survival kit to deal with the world that we're in right now. And that's the part that went viral. But if you watch the rest of the clip, he was saying what I was talking about. And a lot of me and Yasin's conversations are like that. You know what I mean? So he was saying like, the pillars are cracking. This is falling down. And we're just banging the pom-poms and we're just, all of this is just a big distraction. I'm like, oh, that's the song that I've been trying to write for like the whole time we've been making this album. And so our connection and the fact that me and you were connecting about what was going on in the world was that. And I've spoken about this a little out of turn. I just want to say to you, I apologize for, without necessarily having the greatest comprehensive grasp of this subject. I've spoken about this from my understanding of our conversations about it. But I really just want to give you the space to talk about what you being a member of the tribe has meant to you. You did go on Birthright. That happened. You know what I mean? I didn't get that part wrong.
Yeah, I grew up in Beaver Creek, Ohio, which is about 15 minutes from Yellow Springs. We had a graduating class of 500. I was the one Jew, and there was one black kid, one African-American kid. So I didn't grow up around a lot of Jews. My parents intentionally moved from Detroit my dad got a job teaching at Central State, teaching special education at Central State, which is a HBCU 3 miles from Yellow Springs. But they, on some level, intentionally distanced themselves from the Jewish community. They had seen things they didn't like. They were both poor. Both my parents were poor Jews, which means they couldn't, when in like, you know, the 40s and early 50s, when Jewish neighborhoods were forming and Jews were in Detroit and other places were moving to form communities, they couldn't afford to go. So all that to say is I didn't grow up feeling any real connection to my Judaism. I knew what it was. And then I started going to temple. You know, my dad wanted me to get a bar mitzvah, so I did. My bar mitzvah was one of the worst days of my life, by the way. One of the most disappointing. I invited 50 kids and 2 people showed up. The only people there were because they're scared. They don't like, what's this? What, Jews? You know, it was all my dad's friends. It was really a party for him. It was the worst. It was the worst. But my feeling of being in that community when I went to temple was awful. It was not welcoming. It was very much like, oh, you have non-Jewish friends, so fuck off. Like, you know, like it's either you're with us or you're not. That was what I got about the Jewish community, not the religion, the community. I'm about to graduate college. I'm in a real low. My first my first love dumped me, and I'm all heartbroken and sad. And my mom found this brochure. I think it was like one of the first or second birthrights.
Wow.
She was like, "This says you can go to Israel for free."
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't want to go." My dad was like, "You don't have to go." I should also say that my dad volunteered in the 6-Day War. He went and when he was a young man, went and stayed on a kibbutz and, you know, worked the farm while, you know, the other young men in Israel went and fought in that war. And he came back with a very different outlook on things because he was talking to elders and going and meeting people. He's the one that introduced me to the idea very young about Israel and about how that there are a lot of Jews that don't believe that this is correct or divine in any way, that only the hand of God is supposed to lead you to Israel, like that this is all wrong. So I grew up with that, and with that, knowing about that, with that critical voice in my head. But I didn't want to go to fucking Israel. Why? For what reason? And my mom was just like, again, fiery 5-foot woman from Detroit. She's like, "You're getting your ass on that plane. You have a chance to go see the world for free.
Yeah.
You're doing it. Like, I don't care where it is. You're on that plane."
Yeah.
And it was a good trip. Like, you know, there was nothing Jewish religion-wise about the trip. It was nice it was nice to be around other Jews, but I also saw there were places I couldn't go. Like, I was the only kid from Ohio, so they lost all my bags. I was the only kid they lost all my bags. I got there with nothing. So they took me to, like, you know, the main areas of Tel Aviv to buy new stuff, to buy new clothes to wear. And that's where I got to see, even then, the apartheid-like separation, like literally blockades and like, you know, divisions and checkpoints and all that stuff. And like I'm going through to be able to go to Sabaros, which that Sabaros was bombed like, you know, 3 weeks later or whatever. That being said, I want to direct this a little more pointedly. I grew up, so the only place I know any like really Zionist Jews are at work, and I love them. Like, I do love them as people. Like, and I care about them. One of them told me, you know, I didn't even meet anybody that wasn't Jewish until I went to college. You know, like, and that's such a polar opposite experience of mine. And I say that to say, if that's your reality, if you're encased in that Jewish community, you haven't seen real anti-Semitism, like what it really looks like. I have. You know, like, I had a teacher that would not let me talk to Christian girls in his class and enforced it for a year until I socked him in the stomach.
How old were you?
17. And
How would he enforce something like that?
he would come over and he'd break us up. Like, you can't talk to Christian women on my watch, buddy.
Crazy.
And his wife was a teacher too. And his wife used to say stuff like, oh, you got to Jew your way around the markets in Russia and all this. Like, I had friends paint a swastika on my car as a joke. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen the Klan. The Klan showed up to one of the functions at Temple and like did a demonstration. Like, my first fight is when I was 8, because some 8-year-old in the lunch line told me I was a kike and I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't have survived. So like, I bring all that up, and I could tell you 10 more stories, to 100 more. I've seen real anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And my feed is the left of the left. Not one person is saying Jews are evil or anything. This is not a religious situation. This is a situation of colonialism and occupation, mm-hmm. and it's not right. And it breaks my heart every day that a people like the people that I share genealogical traits with. And by the way, like, I'm 100%. I'm not half. All 4 of my grandparents, 3 Ashkenazi, 1 Sephardic, like 100%. And my wife and I fell in love before we even knew that each other was Jewish.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I just know, like, I learned about her a lot. I learned a lot more about her in this process. You were like, man, yeah. I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. You were like, my wife is no joke. Like, man, she's the boss.
She's the one.
Yeah,
she was like October 8th. She was standing by herself in the middle of the Yellow Springs, village thoroughfare with a sign that says, Zionism is not Judaism. Mm. And like, it had been like 2 days and I didn't say anything on my Facebook or on my Instagram. And she let me have it. She's like, if you're the man I think you are and that I married, like, you're going to speak up about this right now. This is our time to speak. Mm. This is our time to, it's nothing is more important. She's like, this, your job you might lose, whatever, nothing can compare to what's going on and the losses that are happening. Like, this is our time to do what we can to make it right and to speak up. And I'm so proud of the collapse for that, because I really feel like it's the least I can do. I don't think I'm doing enough, but it's the least I could do is to make a creative statement, and to stand with you making that statement is an honor. But yeah, I've seen what real anti-Semitism is.
Yeah.
And I get that. And largely because of you, I understand the concept of generational trauma, mm-hmm. and that we all have it. Mm-hmm. And I would want to tell my Zionist friends or coworkers that fear is valid. Like, the fear that you're feeling about all this is valid. It's in all of our genetics. We have this trauma. However, you're pointing it at the wrong direction.
Right. Yes.
You're pointing it in the wrong direction. This is not about you. This is not about you or your fear. Your fear is valid. And guess what? It's a problem. Anti-Semitism is a rising problem. Like, the argument that this guy made to me is like, well, there are police at my kid's school. I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen from October 7th. That happened from 2016.
And
bro.
That's not them being in solidarity with the Palestinians. That's them being white supremacists. That's white supremacy. That's like being that's like being courted by whiteness. Like, yeah, like European Jews are still kind of being courted by whiteness. Like, there's not a full embrace
Certainly.
yet. And yeah, it's just like, whiteness is a thing that expands very slowly and it's very hard fought. You know what I mean?
But it is completely obvious that what's happening now is not about Jewish safety. Mm. This is not about Jewish proliferation or anything like that. This is about greed and colonialism. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, it's my job to do something about it or try.
It's interesting, like, for me being in the music industry, it's like, I know that, like, if I share anything, like if I share people's posts, Palestinian, pro-Palestine posts. I know that that's enough for certain people to consider me an enemy. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like there's no nuance. There's no level that will be acceptable to certain people. And I know that I'll be seen as an enemy. I think I probably, because I'm so vocally Muslim and because I'm so vocally anti-empire and stuff, I always assume that people would know that that's where I'm at. But I mean, I've had a number of Jewish people that I've worked with and done great business with for years, people that I was friends with, there was one there was one business partnership slash friendship that really means a lot to me that I was really worried was over. And it's a really pivotal one in my life. Like it's directly related to my income. And I reached out to this person, was like, hey, I just so you know, I'm going to be podcasting, I'm going to be posting, and I just want to acknowledge you that if there's anything that you want me to know, if there's anything that you want to say to me, if you see or hear me doing things that affect you or make you feel a certain way, or you think I'm missing something, I want you to be able to. And this person was just like, I can't talk about this. And for months, I got no conversation at all. Like, and we do business together. And then just recently, I circled back to it and I was like, hey, like, we very obviously never talked about this. And the person was just like, I just need you to understand as much as you can that I'm just afraid. Like, I'm afraid of even having a conversation. I can't understand the level of like fear that I'm experiencing. You know what I mean? From me, from my kids, they were just like, I'm afraid. And so the person basically told me like, I believe in you're right. It's like, I know who you are. I know where you're coming from. And they were like, I don't even understand this issue. Like, this is not a religious person. This isn't definitely a person that wouldn't identify as a Zionist or anything. It's like, I don't understand this. I just know that I'm deathly afraid and I don't even understand completely why. And I'm like, man, I really understand. I respect feeling afraid. But it was just like a block for this person. You know what I mean? And it makes me just, I wonder if you could just talk about what it's like for you at work, in your family, in community spaces. You know what I mean? There are a lot of Jewish people that are the best at speaking out, that are the best at speaking truth. And every single one of those people is like, I'm going to be excommunicated. There will be friendships that will be over the second I say something. They're afraid at work. They're afraid in their families. They're afraid in their social groups. They're afraid in their communities. And so I'm just curious to hear whatever you feel like sharing about what that is.
It's real, but again, this is like circling back to removing yourself. Like, why is my fear the center of this conversation? When I don't live there, I don't have any relatives there. Why is my fear? Like, if you really, with fear, you kind of have to look into it and see what you're really afraid of. That, dude, like, I'm afraid I'll lose my job Wednesday. I'm afraid as soon as collapse drops, I'm gonna lose my job. And I was on Facebook about to go block a bunch of people, or on Instagram, and about to go block a bunch of people, and I just was like, no, they're the ones that need to see it. They're the ones that need to hear it. And if I get fired, I get fired, man. Like, whatever. I don't, I'm hoping I don't, but it's a fear. But again, like, people are losing entire cultures. People are losing families and memories and their entire histories. I can't lose a job. Like, there's somebody I'm close with who is an Iranian Jew, mm-hmm. whose parents, first, before they moved to Ohio, were in Israel because they had to go there to be safe, like, from Iran or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I love her and respect her, and I never want to hurt her feelings. So we have these conversations, and I try to be accepting of her viewpoint. But it all comes back to the fear.
Yeah. It's interesting, like the ways that fear has been weaponized as part of white supremacy and colonialism and policing. And I mean, it literally has always been used because it's such a raw and real and visceral human experience. Like it's the number one thing that if you learn about political rhetoric, if you learn about propaganda, if you learn about political messaging, the number one way to galvanize a people for you to do evil is to harness and weaponize individual fear that can be collectivized, and I mean across the board from it's like it was at the heart of what so many, evil projects have been. And even like it's a defense for police officers that kill unarmed people. Oh, I was afraid. That's all you got to say. You know what I mean? It's like,
All you have to say,
I was like,
you're
okay,
off the
so
hook.
yeah, you are a paid officer of the state with who's trained, who can use deadly force, who pulled over civilians that weren't doing anything at all. They could be a child, it could be an elderly person, it could be somebody in their car telling you that I have a legal firearm, I'm not going to go for it. You murder them in front of their kids, and like, yeah, I was afraid. Oh, you didn't mention you were afraid. Sorry, like, you know what I mean? We're sorry to have inconvenienced you. Why didn't you tell us you were afraid? You know what I mean? They're like just the weaponization of fear, and how I mean that's so basic to people carrying out these kind of political
Yeah.
the combination of danger, whether it's economic, I mean, also economic fear is used against people as well. Like that's the
Oh
big
my
thing.
gosh.
You know what I'm saying? Like these people are stealing your jobs. These people are messing up the economy. These people are, these people are trying to make you destitute. They're trying to take your place. Like, man, it feels so simple, but the way that fear is weaponized is really kind of fascinating, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no positive version of trauma. There's no like, what's trauma on the positive side? Like something that felt so good that you always remember it and it always like brings you. And there's stuff like that, but it's not as strong as the things you remember you're afraid of. Those things literally cause trauma and cause you to be, you know, keep bring anxiety and all kinds of other physical health problems. It's way easier to galvanize that than to like I can't think of a positive version of trauma. Like what's the happy version of like something good that happens to you that stays
Well,
with
I
you?
mean, I think that's what used to be in place of that, like when there was a genuine sense of patriotism, a genuine sense of like pride in one's people. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because when you want to see what that part actually looks like, it's when people are in the position of being oppressed, that's what people hold on to. You know what I mean? Is like the love of people, the love of community, the love of culture, the love of song and food and religion, and you know what I mean? Like those good things are what help people survive through those things. You know what I mean? But then if there's not that kind of like healing process, then it's easy to become the monster, you know? It's easy to I'm saying like for me it's so like obvious that the
Yeah,
the the Europeans that left Europe, like Resma Menakem talks about this, the Europeans that left Europe were the people who left Europe saying we're being oppressed. You know, and when people talk about being going medieval on you, it's like tarring and feathering and castration and lynching and all those things. Everything, the way he says it is everything white bodies did to bodies of color in America were done to them by other white bodies in Europe.
100%.
And they came and they carried out the trauma that was inflicted upon them, and like did those things because they didn't heal from what happened to them. And it's just like, man, it's deep, man. What is it about Europe, man? What is it? I saw this Jewish man speaking the other day, and he was saying, he was an Arab Jew, and he said the version of history that is falsely universalized as Jewish history is European Jewish history. This like story, this generational story of like our whole identity as a people is that we're victims. The victimhood. He's like, that is a uniquely European story. He's like, that's not the story of of Jewish people in Spain. That's not the, in Cairo, in Istanbul,
Hmm.
in, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't like. Can you imagine, like, when I think about, the Jews that went to Israel, and oppressed people have always fled to other places.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you justify doing that and then claiming yourself as, like, this land is letting you in, and then you're the dominant force? Like, I heard Netanyahu say the other day that the majority of Israelis have no interest in a Palestinian state. How do, how do you come in as effectively immigrants and declare dominance? What kind of demonic,
Yeah.
like you said, maybe it is a proximity to whiteness, or a
I mean, that's pure white. Like, that's what whiteness is. Like, that's the
yeah,
purpose of whiteness.
I totally see it. And when you see those videos of Israelis that are like, yeah, that are all glory, like, I'll kill two more today. Yeah, I love Israel. I'm like, you guys are You guys are Christian nationalists. You're nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you remind me of white Christian nationalists. You sound the exact same.
One of the other things at this moment, like, really made clearer for me from a different perspective is, like, there's a lot of the words around the racial conversation I really don't like. Like, that, I just feel like they fall flat. And we've had this conversation. Me and you have had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Mm-hmm.
just catchphrases and things like that, I don't like them. Even if they're true, and even if I understand and agree with them, I just don't like using them. But I don't like the idea of ally. There's something about the word ally that just feels like it's not enough to me. You know what I mean? It feels like, but I understand it. And I always understand that when something happens racially, that white people should be the first people to speak out about it. I've never been on the other side of that. I've never experienced the other side of that the way that I have since October 7th, with the way that Jewish people speak out. Like, you notice that, like, a lot of my posts are, most of what I've posted have been Jewish people. And I would say the
Yeah.
grand tradition of Jewish truth tellers, because it means so much as a Muslim, for me as a Muslim, to have Jewish sources and Jewish, like, outspoken, strong, educated, articulate, passionate, authentic, sincere lifers to be able to post. You know what I'm saying? To be like, look, this is not just my perspective because I'm an outsider in your group. You know what I mean? But, like, there is a group of people from within. But then also, it means a lot to me that, like, I see all these posts of, like, the kind of people you're talking about that are, like, parading around with, going through Palestinian homes and, like, parading around with their negligees on or something. And I will never repost that, because I'm like, man, those are the worst. I don't identify people as the worst of who they are. I always try to
Right.
identify with the best of whoever somebody is. So, like, the self-critical Jewish people, the truth tellers, it's like, man, if I was in your position, I hope I would be like you. I hope I would be like Sim Kern. I hope I would be like Norman Finkelstein. I hope I would be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Unjust, you know what I'm saying? Like,
And it's so disheartening and just horrendous when those people are dismissed as self-hating.
yeah.
Like, that's like the weakest dismissal ever. Like, no, I love humanity and I love God and I stand in love. You're the one that's standing in fear, which is the opposite.
Right.
I'm coming from love.
And it's deeply loving to look at oneself and one's people, and to not reject one's people and to not reject oneself, but to basically say, like, this is not who we are. Yeah, I know this is this is what we are in this moment, but, like, I'm actually holding on to, like, this is not who we are. Special thanks to my dear friend and to our guest, unJUST, Justin Herman. I'm really so grateful for this project that we made together, Love and Service. People ask, like, I think they see the fact that it's so, like, we really wanted this one to have the human touch. And so, the beats are maybe what somebody might call lo-fi. The album art is hand drawn. The videos are animated. And so there are some people that are used to the stuff that I used to do on Rhymesayers being so big and polished and clean and crisp. And they're like, is this a real album? Yes, this is what I poured the last 3 years of my life into. And, if you want to support what we do, if you want to be part of it. Also, like I said, we ordered a certain number of vinyl and the deluxe vinyl. And based on how that goes, we'll decide about how to move forward. So I don't know if this deluxe vinyl will be available forever or not. As of right now, there's a limited order that's in. The album comes out April 26th, inshallah. And the vinyl ships, vinyl production and manufacturing is a beast all its own. And so the vinyl will ship as soon as we get it. There's a chance that it could be a couple weeks after the actual release date, which is pretty common nowadays in the world of vinyl. CDs and cassettes ship right away, and then also if you purchase the album, you get the digital download right away. So go to brotherali.com and check out all of that stuff. You can also see our other projects are up there. A number of them have sold out, and so some of them are gone forever. But man, I'm really grateful to be able to have made this music and to be able to share it with you. Next week on the podcast, we're going to do a song by song breakdown, preview of the album, so that me and Just will just talk through each song and what it means to us. And just really grateful to be able to share this with you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. I'm noticing a lot of doors closed to me at the moment. And the fact that you are keeping the door open, it's really about me and you. It's really not about this industry. It really is about the artists and the people that receive the art. We're doing this together. So very, very grateful for you. We love you, appreciate you. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.